So my introduction of Corinne is going to go something like this. I reached out to someone who had been doing community work and had been really focused on a facet of the work, which was lifting youth up and handing that baton off, right? And I'm not anyone to tell someone when to do that handoff. But whenever I see a handoff happen between someone who is working an organization and then handing it off to the next generation, it is a beautiful thing to watch. Because for some of us, it's so hard to disconnect from something we've invested so much time into. And yet, it's so important to make that handoff. Because if that handoff isn't made by the time we're burned out, kicked out, or no longer on this earth, it leaves a gap and a void. And you know what happens in those voids? Power struggles, even within our community. So I met Corinne Collier, and Corinne had been working with Black Lives Matter Political Action Committee, Harrison, and other youth, and had been and continues to invest time into supporting the vision that they have in co-creating the future. Corinne.
Thank you very much. All right, so I'm not a professional speaker, so excuse my cheat sheet. So I am Corinne Collier, Senior Advisor for the Political Action Committee. I met Dr. Muñoz through a mutual friend, Eugene Montero. Dr. Muñoz reached out to us when he saw the disparities in the vaccine distribution. He brought together community leaders from all over, from all walks of life, ones that have been doing the work for a very long time, to the PAC who's not even a year old yet. Dr. Muñoz, got us all together. He helped us, collaborate our efforts and our resources to tackle these vaccine distribution inequities. And this personally hit home for me. I'm a single mom, and I'm still on chemotherapy for breast cancer diagnosis that I received back in 2017. My son, who's a little bit older, is still living at home, was working full-time at a retail hardware store. And while all the logistics of the vaccination and the pandemic were being worked out, he was working long hours with the public, and sometimes with no mask on, and then coming home to me with my fragile immune system. We were able to get, due to the efforts of Dr. Muñoz and several other community leaders, 4,000 people vaccinated in 2 weekends over a span of 2 weekends, my son being one of them. He was also able to reach out to people that he worked with and get them vaccinated as well, that would go home to the same situations, moms that needed to go to work, grandparents that are older and were more susceptible within the community to this pandemic. My son, the one that I'm so proud of, he's going to school for a degree in psychology. He's an artist and just an all-around amazing person. He was also threatened and harassed by police here in Rhode Island. My children were raised to respect their elders, but as a parent, for me, it gets harder and harder to enforce when so many examples of harm, lack of compassion, concern for our people is unwarranted and blatantly shown by law enforcement on a daily basis. Unfortunately, at times resulting in death, and far too often a lack of responsibility and accountability. What saddens and bothers me the most is that I feel that the community is still not being heard and listened to. People of color and franchise communities are still being looked at as a quota and not human beings by the people in office and the people we pay to protect us, and it's unacceptable. I am personally here to use my voice and say that the former breadcrumbing tactics will no longer work. I will continue to assure that we elect the representation needed to focus on the betterment of our communities and acknowledge that their right to be heard. Together, we will all fight for what is our basic human right and the far too often methodical American dream that we come here to find. This fight is personally not about me. This fight is bigger than me. It is for my African and indigenous ancestors that built this country on the slaves and the hard work that they built this country on. This fight is about those that came before me that are willingly and unwillingly sacrificed their lives in the name of freedom. It's about my children. It's about the generations to follow. It is now time right now to remove antiquated laws, policies, and politicians that only represent a few and serve a few. Join us to this call of action. It's now time, Rhode Island, to start listening. So are you listening? Because the time is right now. Thank you.